As I've kind of maybe hinted on, well, I say maybe, I have hinted on my Instagram, I kind of wanted to do like a deep dive into like my experience and how I found it. And I mean, it wasn't the most positive experience, but I think a very important thing to cover about it. And, you know, I feel like I'm maybe unique in some ways in that, like, the way I approach sport, possibly. I do think I value certain, not that it's right or wrong, but I do think that maybe I value certain things more than others do in elite sport. So for that, I think it's quite important for those that are interested and willing to sit through me ramble on about myself. I think it's kind of important to know what my background is and kind of where I came from and stuff. So starting off, again, this will be kind of the personal side of it, my story from when I was born, you know, the kind of classic how I was raised, well, not how I was raised, but where I was raised, and like I moved around a little bit. Anyways, I'll get into it now. So I was born in Paisley. I moved in Scotland, 1993, November. Moved back to Canada. So my mum is Canadian, my dad was Scottish. He's from Paisley as well, and moved back to Canada. My brother was born there. Moved back to Scotland again for a couple of years, and then kind of the same as grade 2 or primary 3, I think, I moved back to Canada again. And I would say I grew up in Canada. I would say that was very much where you know, your kind of childhood memories were of like whatever, running around in the street and all the kind of stuff kids do. So I would say that in Canada is where like I kind of grew up. So, and from, I would say, to kind of get kind of personal with it, I would say from a young age, this, I don't think has had anything to do with moving, but I think it was more just kind of the way I am. But I felt like quite different from an early age. I think now being obviously an adult and stuff, I've shown some signs actually that I am, they say, neurologically diverse now, because it's not as simple as a spectrum, but basically somewhat on the spectrum. A lot of people might think that's strange, but I basically display a lot of behavioral traits in terms of like obsession, and something I'll get into later, and focus and stuff like that, and some social interactions and the way I see social situations that would suggest that I'm neurologically diverse, as they call it now, but basically somewhat on the autistic spectrum. But anyways, so yeah, I think that played a part in me feeling quite different from an early age. I think I found social interaction just never felt easy for me. I'd always look at, you know, people speaking and stuff and be like, it just seems so effortless, and for me, it never came naturally. And it's something I you know, is a combination of maybe having low confidence, as lots of kids do, but also just being different in the way I am. So from a young, not from a young age, probably from around the ages of 7 or 8, I started to get bullied in school quite heavily, just for being weird. And, you know, I was very, not very confident, you know, insecure. But, you know, I used to enjoy my own company quite a lot. I used to really just pick some weird things and get obsessed in them as well. And I found that's where I found myself quite comfortable. So I was really into Lord of the Rings. And, you know, I'm always looking back on the way how I was raised. I find that stuff really interesting, the psychology of it. But like how I was when I was younger, and, you know, maybe the nature versus nurture and stuff, like what shapes you into the person that you are today. And I think I see some parallels between my obsession then as a kid. I like asked my brother, I used to just like, I used to be obsessed with ants, and I would just stare at ants, like but like, you know, watch the way they would move and stuff, and like feed them and all that. Yeah. I was obsessed with ants, and then, you know, I was obsessed with Lord of the Rings and basically being, you know, I wanted to be Aragorn. I wanted to be a soldier. And I think that was maybe kind of the first point in my maybe like life when I started to really like admire sort of like maybe leadership and teamwork and those sort of values, and being an important contributor to like something that's bigger than yourself. But yeah, I just loved it. I made bows and arrows and stuff. I got really good at making bows and arrows, almost too good, because I remember the first time I put a feather into a like a bamboo stick, and it flew, and I was like, we had to dismantle it because it was too dangerous. The world wasn't ready for power like that. But yeah, anyways, really obsessed with Lord of the Rings. And then kind of come 2004, 2005, the Calgary Flames, where I lived in Canada, that ice hockey team, or hockey team as I prefer to call it, but anyways, they went on a playoff run, and it was awesome, an awesome experience. Our whole street, and I grew up, I was bullied in school 100% and felt very isolated in school, and it was something that was really tough, and I struggled to make friends in school. But I was also kind of lucky in that our neighborhood, we had neighbors to our right, neighbors to our left, and neighbors across, and we were all like the same age, and we all got along really, really well and stuff, and like all the parents did as well. And those are probably some of my closest friends from my childhood. And yeah, we would just walk into each other's houses and stuff, and not even knock and stuff. It was just kind of like that. It was really nice in that aspect. But yeah, we were all got into the hockey and stuff, and barbecues in the summer, and kind of in the playoffs, which gets into the summer, and it was just really fun experience. And I don't know what it was, but just seeing that way the sport brought people together, I think maybe that's, it was an admiration, like an ego thing as well. I wanted to be a professional athlete from a young age. I wanted to be a pro hockey player because I saw the way people admired them. I think that drove a lot of it as well. But I think more deeply, there was sort of like an innate feeling in my gut that just sport gives you this sort of purpose and drive. And, you don't have to explain it. Some things you wonder, I do anyways, like, what's the point in, like, I don't know, like investment bank, or like, like what's the point in money? Does it really give you anything? Like, you can question those sort of things. But for me, when I've been competing in sport and when I've been working towards a goal in sport, it's just sort of this drive and this feeling that I get that's hard to describe and to put into words. And it's something that I really, really enjoy, and it's really exciting for me. So, yeah, I think that was the kind of first sign I got from there. And, I was still like at school and stuff, like feeling pretty isolated, low confidence, and I felt like I didn't really have much value in myself, I would say, maybe. And I'd often question, why wouldn't people value me? And maybe me going to sport and that insecurity and that valuing that was a pathway for me in order to like escape that, or maybe build confidence, or maybe just even to stop being bullied. I mean, one regret I have, and I don't recommend this for everybody, but one of the few regrets I have is that I didn't stand up to the bullies at that time. And to be honest, I should have just punched them in the face, knowing what I know now, and it's pathetic. But if I could go back and tell my younger self, I'd be like, stand up to them and probably just knock them out. It's not the right way to deal with problems, but I think that would have fixed that situation. But yeah, if you're getting bullied, don't just go and punch your bully. Like, yeah. Anyways, so I think that sport started to give me a bit of confidence, and obviously I picked it up relatively late in Canada. Like, you pick up sport, like you pick up hockey as soon as you can walk. You start skating, and that's like at 3 or 4. People normally start playing hockey, and I was 11. That's kind of when I expressed interest in getting into sport and stuff. And yeah, my parents were very like supportive in it as well, and like so it's a big investment as well. Getting into hockey is quite a lot of equipment you need to buy and stuff, and loads of driving and stuff. But no, it was pretty got pretty obsessed, that's for sure. We actually moved to like across an ice hockey rink, like after my parents split up. Like, my dad, one place he moved was across from an ice hockey rink, an outdoor one. Obviously in Canada it gets cold enough to you can just play outside and play whenever you want, and he sort of just figured out how to flood it because it was ran by volunteers, and there wasn't really any way that you could, it would just sit there if nobody did it, obviously. So my dad just went out with a hose in -20 in Canada and just started spraying it. Eventually we had a rink to play on, which was awesome. Like, we could literally walk out the door and be with our skates on, cross the street on our knees so that we didn't like scrape our blades, and then slide down the hill and be playing hockey. So I was able to, again, the obsessive part of me as well got into it, and I would just, the few times I did homework as well, I was pretty bad at doing homework from a young age. I would either be at school or playing hockey, practicing on the rink, and just screwing around, imagining myself being, you know, this like superstar hockey player, as like most kids probably do. But yeah, I started to get good, started to progress quite quickly. I kind of got, so like in Canada, there's roughly sort of per age group, there's roughly around 10 to 12 divisions, and I, within a few years, kind of got to like the first or second division roughly. So I started getting quite good at hockey, and I think along with that, I started to grow my confidence, and I ended up moving schools as well, from like kind of one area into like a different area. So it was one group went into high school, and then I kind of went to a different high school that was actually closer to our new house. And yeah, I think then I don't know, it's really hard to pinpoint what it was that it gave me, but for me, like, I really do think that sports gives you that confidence and that drive, and teaches you lessons about yourself, and being exposed to that adversity can really like give you more than just the outcome of the sport. And that's something that I'm really passionate about now, is like, you know, with rowing, it's like, what does having a faster 2K really get you, apart from obviously getting in, you know, into the top boat and, you know, getting a medal or whatever. You know, actually in some situations you can get recruited to college for that. But for a lot of people, for adults and stuff that aren't competing in colleges and stuff, you know, what do you get from going faster? And that's one thing, again, I maybe get into, but rowing just gives you that sort of exposure to something really hard, but like the lessons, I think it's unrivaled in terms of like the lessons you can learn about adversity, and the confidence that you can build from the skills that you develop through putting yourself through these hard things. And I do wonder if like these exposures to, yeah, I think I do think that hockey gave that to me. But anyways, so around like 14, 15, we ended up moving back to Scotland. Part of the reason was just to spend time with our family over here. The other part of it as well was to basically get a free education as well, because we had to pay for our education in Canada. So we like, I don't know if we could have afforded it, but like, yeah, moved back so that we could basically get affordable education, affordable university, which, to be honest, I think is something that everybody should have. But anyways, came back to Scotland. Again, I think the bullying pretty much stopped there. You know, I kind of came over, and I had a Canadian accent and stuff, and I had a bit of confidence and stuff. So you know, the bullying stopped, and like I was a bit of a novelty in the school maybe. So like the bullying side of it wasn't there anymore. And just physically as well, I started to grow as well. I used to be a bit smaller, and I kind of started to catch up and stuff. So maybe, again, it's pathetic, but especially with boys, it's sometimes, you know, being bigger is like, you're just less likely to get bullied, which is absolutely pathetic. But that's perhaps something that contributed to being bullied less. But yeah, I think, you know, part of who I am as well, I do think I always will have an element of that insecurity of like feeling that, you know, I'm different, and I'm sure a lot of people do feel this, but I think, you know, learning to cope with that, and I'm actually speaking to therapy now, again, which I think everybody should do. Not that there's anything chronically wrong with me right now. There was a time after, when I was quitting the GB team, that there was something wrong with me, just through the stress that I went through. But now I very much know that I'm not, you know, I'm okay, like clinically I'm okay, but I think everybody should go regardless if they do or do not think they have something, just to iron out the creases as best as you can. So anyway, something I'm speaking about now, and I think, you know, I'll probably always have that element of insecurity in like social situations, just through inherently who I am, but maybe also through being bullied at a young age. But I think one thing I took away from that, and one thing I learned after being bullied, was that I became very aware of other people when they were being bullied. And it's something that I just absolutely hated. And I've been told, especially actually by my therapist and by other people as well, that I'm an incredibly like valued person. And that's maybe something I'll get into in the other video about what my problems were when I was in the GB team, because I really strongly felt like my values were being crossed. And, you know, I've put quite a lot of trust in people, a lot of faith in people, but if my values get crossed, it's very hard for me to forgive somebody. But anyways, seeing people getting bullied, especially in the teenage years, you know, it happens all throughout being ready in adulthood as well. Seeing other people being bullied was just, for me, something that wasn't okay. And I would do everything that I could. Maybe not every time, but I would try, and if I could influence a situation, perhaps maybe make somebody feel more included, rather than being like, you know, with boys and girls, maybe, I don't know. This is just from my experience, but you cannot be, stop bullying so-and-so, stop bullying so-and-so. Like, you kind of have to like do it less directly and maybe make them feel more included in a way if you can. So I think it's something that I transferred into coaching as well. When I started coaching juniors as well, I became very aware of like when juniors were excluding other people, because I was just so tuned into it, because I knew what it was like, and I knew the pain that people could feel like from being bullied. So transferring it into coaching, coaching kids especially, is something that I valued really highly, and I made sure never happened when I was coaching. Yeah, I think for me, like, again, trying to figure out the way my brain works, I think seeing part of why I like really enjoy what I do now is because, and I enjoyed it in team sports as well, and sharing experiences and going through adversity, I think is because when I started to maybe, you know, it wasn't like loads of people, but maybe a few people that I maybe helped feel less bullied after I stopped being bullied, sharing that experiencing and knowing that the pain that they can go through, and then seeing them come out on the other side and like feel happier or more included or whatever, and see them not experience that pain anymore, I think is kind of what became the cornerstone for me, for what I'm doing now, maybe like on a lesser scale. Obviously with coaching, it's like, you know, if you can't figure out how to take your blade out cleanly, it's not the biggest problem in the world. But maybe that's, again, I don't know, but maybe that's part of the reason where these values start to get formed. So yeah, where are we now? So I kind of dropped sport for a couple of years. One main thing was to focus on my school, to focus on like my final exams before getting into university. You know, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but you know, I'm quite happy that my parents pushed me to try and keep as many doors open as possible. And so focused massively on my schooling, got good enough grade, not amazing grades, but good grades. Yeah, another thing as well, like, again, I'm going to keep remembering these things and probably going off on tangents, but maths is basically what I did at university, or math, as you say in North America, but maths was something I was terrible in, not terrible in at school, but like it was always my weakest subject. And I remember when I got into like my kind of big years for high school, for getting into university, I basically, I don't know what it was, but I just stopped caring about what other people thought, and I just started to ask questions all the time, and anything that I was not 100% absolutely certain on, and like in order to understand, I just had to question everything, and I started doing that. I started to understand it more. And, you know, in my class, I was the one who was asking the most questions. I was the one who was asking the dumbest questions from the way I maybe thought about it, and the other people would think about it for themselves as well if they had similar questions. I became, in that class, I was the top ranked or whatever. Like I was one of the lower maths classes, but I was the only one in my class to get an A. And the big part of that was like asking questions. And again, it's something in sport and life and coaching, like I really do push for and encourage people to do, is just, if you do not understand something, communicate. Like asking questions is like one of the best ways you can communicate, because you're not just looking for the answer, you're telling the person who's explaining it, who's the expert, what you don't understand, and you're communicating to them like how they've not explained it right. You're by questioning them, you're telling them that, look, you're not explaining this part of it clearly. So again, that's probably a skill I think I learned through maths as well, like going into university with it. You have to obviously understand it. Like you can't just memorize something, like you do actually have to understand the concept. So breaking it down fully and really stripping it down to the bones and understanding it is so critical for maths. And I don't think I'll ever use my maths degree, but I do think the problem solving and that thought process is something that I'd have taken away. So again, I'm kind of like, not like what I got from maths, but like what skills did I learn in maths? Not what I got from sport, but like what skills do you learn from sport and how can you transfer that into life? But yeah, so before going into university, stopped to focus on studying, started to get very bored. I would just go to the gym and like lift weights to like be strong and muscular, which I got very bored of quickly. I was just like, what is the point? And again, going back to the purpose and the drive, I just lost that feeling in my gut and I missed it. And I actually saw Helen Glover competing at summer of 2012, bodybuilding, was going out partying and stuff, doing normal teenage high school things. And I saw Helen Glover competing at the 2012 Olympics, and I heard that she had reached the Olympics 4 years after starting the sport. So she went from beginner, again, I think she was like a runner or something like that before. So maybe like a bit of transferability, but is that a word, transferability? Into sport. But anyways, basically proved that you can get fast in rowing from a young age. You can progress, you can get fast quickly in rowing if you have the right mindset, and that drew me in. So, I signed up to university rowing program, Strathclyde Uni, close place in my heart, but it wasn't as competitive. Like I knew that place wasn't going to get me into the university. So again, looked up the START program. I heard that there's like, take your height, weight, arm span, fitness tests, strength tests. I was literally 0.5 centimeters under the height requirement. So I remember my dad drove me to the testing place, and I had my seat reclined the whole way just so that I could have my vertebrae wouldn't compress, so I could try and keep my height as high as possible. And it still wasn't enough. I still was under, but thankfully, I've got quite long arms, as you can maybe see, and fairly like naturally strong as well. But I also think ice hockey like gets you fit. Like I remember when I went back to playing hockey after rowing, I was like, I think this is harder than rowing. So yeah, hockey got me very fit for it as well. So I became very quickly obsessed with it. Massively obsessed. Like I would think about rowing all the time. I would obviously wake up, go training, and then go off to university for a few hours, and then go back to my second session, go home. That was normally how it would work. And as soon as I got home, I would just go in and type in rowing into YouTube and just watch videos for hours and hours and hours and just look at what they were doing and try and figure out what it was that they were doing that was making them go quickly. And I just did that for for a few years at the start. I was watching videos all the time, and something I'm a big believer in is visualization, and the power of watching something and imagining yourself doing it builds the same neural pathways as actually doing it. So it's a massive way to pick up skills. And I progressed quite quickly. Within 9 months, I think I went from like a 7-minute 2K quite close to like a 6-minute 2K. So very quick progression, and technically as well, I was progressing quickly. In the START program, plenty of people that can pull a big erg, but loads of them just cannot move a boat. Just naturally being bigger people, it becomes harder. But yeah, progression, but again, I won't get into the specifics of the situation with my coach at the time, but long story short, I injured my back very badly. I had 2 bulging discs. something I talk about as well, people coming from different sports into rowing, like so often worse than a beginner coming into rowing, because you've got maybe strong legs or a strong mind or strong heart and lungs, but everything that connects it isn't, you don't have those rowing stability muscles. And I had a very strong drive and I worked very hard, but my core was just terrible and my mobility was terrible, and unsurprisingly got injured very badly. I ended up being out for around 12 months, but 12 to 18 months roughly. But in that period, I drifted away from the work that I was doing, and I got very assured of myself. And I was like, look at the progression I was doing. And like, I was progressing very quickly. Like, it would have been after that first year, going into my second year, there was a good chance that I would have, this was so 19, I started rowing. Going into turning 20, there was a good chance I was going to go for a GB under 23 vest. So a fast progression. But going into injury, I thought like, you can draw a graph and then cut off the graph and then see where that graph's going to go. You can run away with ideas about what your progression is going to be like. In my head, I was like, yeah, I've got this in the bag, piece of cake. And while I was injured, I just started getting into partying more. And, I have a very obsessive personality, as I said already. I know I've repeated myself, but it doesn't just apply to rowing or to sport or to ants or to spreadsheets. It applies to like alcohol and partying and that feeling, that buzz that you get on a night out, and this feeling that like alcohol can give you. So I would say, I got into an unhealthy relationship with partying where it wasn't daily, it was every weekend, but it was hard and it was too much. And I remember hearing Tim Foster say, who's a former Olympic champion, he used to use partying as an excuse as a way to diffuse. So that's one thing I always say is like, be careful of like what you want to hear versus what you need to hear. And I took that and I ran with it. And I'm like, I'm somebody who just needs to party in order to balance my training. And you can guess where this is going. But when my back did start to heal, I still had that in the back of my mind. And I'd forgotten, or I knew what it took to get the progression, but I just wasn't willing to do it anymore because I really did think, I've got this, and put aside all the hard stuff that I did before and just be like, no, it's fine. And, just constantly lying to myself. And like, long story short, coming back, I was miles off the pace. And I don't want to like say, just because I'm getting beaten by so-and-so that it was bad, but I remember the first training camp I came back to, there was Edinburgh, and all the guys, all the scullers, all the lightweight scullers, they were all miles ahead of me. And then like one of the lightweight women who was also very, very good sculler, but obviously if you're a heavyweight man versus a lightweight woman sculler, like you're both trying to get into the GB team, the heavyweight male sculler needs to be a lot faster. And as in terms of a benchmark, I was miles off of where I need to be. They were nearly beating me. I remember on 3x2K, on one of the 2Ks, they nearly beat me I only beat them by like a second or something. So, not to put down like women's rowing, of course, but just from where I needed to be, I was miles off. And I went to the trial, and the person in first place was 2 minutes ahead of me over 5K. So like a 20-minute race, they were 2 minutes ahead of me. And for whatever reason, I just didn't recognize that, like, I wasn't doing enough. So yeah, like basically a massive mindset pit I was in, and there's so much I could talk about as well. Even just the injury on its own is its own video, and the mindset stuff as well. So maybe I will do some more on that. But lying to my coach at the time, saying it was my back that was sore, it was my itchy throat, and just constantly putting the handle down, constantly backing out of sessions, because deep down I wasn't aware of like what it took. And I got dropped from the Scottish Institute of Sport, and I mean, as performances go, like definitely should have been, but it wasn't until basically a volunteer in kind of 2016, Richard Walsh, who basically there's a few people who I wouldn't have gotten where I did if it wasn't for them. Number one being my dad. Well, they're probably gonna argue about this, but my dad and my now fiance, Pauline, I would 100% not be where I am today if it wasn't for them. And the other one was the coaches were, first off, Richard Walsh, and then also Colin Williamson. But Richard Walsh was basically the only person in the rowing world to give me a chance when nobody else would, and rightly so, because I wasn't performing. But Ricky, as he's called, he gave me the chance, and he looked past the speed, and he's also a volunteer and a coach that will give you the skin off his back, the shirt off his back, to help you progress. And very quickly, I was aware of Ricky's training. I was like, I started to become aware, like, right, I need to toughen up, blah, blah, blah. And I knew Ricky's training was tough, and I got onto his program, lasted a couple of weeks, and then eventually, one session was, oh, Ricky, my back's sore. And again, I just want to be clear, if your back's sore, if you're ill, don't push through it. For me in this situation, 9 times out of 10, I was lying to myself and lying to the coaches. But Ricky, he saw through that quite quickly, and he pulled me up and he said, Jack, you've told me you want to get into the GB rowing team. We've set the plan to get there, and you have not been doing the plan. That's totally fine. Not everybody, a very, very small majority of the population want to do the work required to get to where you're trying to go. And when it was worded like that, I don't know what it was, but it just became so clear. And coming through that, there definitely wasn't, again, I'm trying to keep this brief. I could tangents on every single point here, but started to progress quickly, started to progress right up the rankings again, climbing into like 4th, 5th at trials and stuff. And basically, it wasn't smooth sailing from there. There was still a lot of mindset issues that I dealt with, and as my progression went on, I got more dialed into mindset. Every year I would come back and ask, what can I do differently, and get very specific on like what I was going to do. And I'm a big believer in having a really specific focus, because I think having a specific focus compounds into a way that subconsciously your brain thinks, well, if I'm being this focused on going to bed at 8:30, then I might as well have a healthy, balanced dinner. And then, I might as well make sure that I train consistently if I'm putting this much effort into these small things. So it has that compounding effect. But basically, again, a video in its own way. But every year I would come back into the point. From what drove me, I think, was the fear of getting into a position where I would look back on my rowing career and say, if I stuck it out for one more year, I would have made it. Or if I just slept better, I would have made it. Or if I just trained more consistently, I would have made it. And having the fear of that regret in the future is what drove me into wanting to put myself into a position where I can say I honestly did every single thing I could in order to achieve my goals. And now confidently I can say that I did. And I was lucky I wasn't lucky, I earned it. To get into a position where I could look back and, the last couple of years of my career, I'm like, I don't know what else I can do. I'm doing everything I can. I was always the most consistent in training. Would go to bed at 8 p.m. every night, maybe 8:30 on a wild night. Time my food well, recover well. Literally everything you can think of, I was doing it. And that for me, it was a massive driver. And that fear of regret is what I think pushed me to really uncover every stone that there is in getting faster. So part of that process as well, I think, is awesome, because I learned so many skills that I know now that I can take away and wherever I want to go in life. Now with coaching, or who knows, in 10 years if something changes, I can take those skills that I learned there and apply them elsewhere. So again, that was a process of getting into the GB team and stuff. Ricky got me as fast as he could on his own. He was a volunteer, full-time teacher, no resources, no equipment, gave his heart and soul to me. And seeing a coach that gave that much to me as well just made me even more motivated to succeed for them. And I think one thing I would always do in a race was do a push for Pauline, a push for my dad, and a push for Ricky as well. Colin got the occasional one as well, but it was mainly Pauline, my dad, and Ricky. So yeah, Ricky got me, I think we would both agree that he got me as fast as possible. And what I needed was more external competition. So I got joined. One thing I had been doing with Ricky is I was putting my boat on the roof of my car and driving to Strathclyde Park from the Clyde is 20 minutes away from Strathclyde Park, which is where Edinburgh trains. And there was a time, still is now, but there was a time from 2017 through to like right now there's like little GB lightweight doubles training there, for example. So there's always a high caliber of lightweight rowers there, but at the time we had basically, we would argue the best sculling group outside of the GB team, over Leander. So if anybody's from Leander watching this, then fight me, because in I think 2018, 2019, I'm going to say that we were faster. But yeah, that getting to that environment of like-minded people. But yeah, like-minded individuals, and every weekend we could get together and train and basically just beat the shit out of each other. But yeah, I just exposed myself to very high standard of competition every weekend. And I think when I would go to racing, you know, I was used to it. I was used to that pressure to perform and that expectation to like be the best and be the best you can. And it taught me as well to not think externally as well. Like if you want to, every weekend racing and competing in pieces and stuff like that, and in training, you learn the best ways to work for yourself. And I think for me, that was, how can I look as internally as possible and not worry about external factors? So, yeah, and I think, like, long story short, like, I started getting even faster. That really pushed me on. Started knocking on the door of the GB team. Started not winning trials, sorry, but beating people in the GB team, beating a few people in the GB team, beating a few people in the GB team repeatedly. You know, you can't just, that's what Colin said, you can't just knock on the door, you have to like kick it down. So that's understandably as well. At that point I was 27 as well. Something I didn't really talk about, but that was hard, was, you know, most people I knew that rowed after university would stop after like a year or two, stop when you're 22, 23. I kept going for my whole 20s, like when people were getting jobs and stuff and moving on. I was lucky that, you know, Clydesdale, my old club, gave me a part-time job that was very flexible, that allowed me to make enough money. I was lucky that Pauline's parents, we were living in a flat that they owned, that we paid very little rent on, that we could afford. Maybe if I didn't have that situation and we were forced to move out, like, I maybe would have had to get a job and wouldn't have gotten to where I did. But anyways, very lucky in that way. To get the chance to train more or less full time. I mean, I had no money. And Pauline had her job through podiatry as well. So that helped. But yeah, anyways. Yeah, I got won some non-Olympic trials, got my first GB vest. That was an amazing experience. Mainly getting to tell some of the people that are closest to me. That was the most special part. It was in lockdown, so they didn't get to come watch, but it's still like the journey and stuff like that, that's what it's all about, and the achievement and stuff. But yeah, got into the GB team after that, and then that's going to be another video in its own way. And don't get me wrong, a lot of positives from the GB team, but also what I'll talk about is a lot of things that I massively stand against. And yeah, so again, just trying to get into who I am as a person, trying to explain it as best as possible, so that you can understand the way that I see things and the way that I disagree, and kind of some of the foundations in who I am and sort of the principles that guide me. But yeah, alrighty, stay tuned for part 2. I don't know when it will be. It's probably going to try and do it a little bit earlier in the day. But yeah, okay, goodbye.